Del Martinez always thought he'd die from a snake bite or at the very least tripping over his camera bag while running from a bear. He didn't, however, expect to find himself Earth's de facto ambassador to the stars, and he especially didn't expect his first intergalactic contact to come in the form of an email, not a sleek holographic transmission or a mysterious beam of light descending from the heavens. Just an email that pinged his inbox like a spam ad for miracle hair regrowth. The sender's name, CXIX, looked more like a password than a name. The subject line read, "Inquiry regarding apex predators." Naturally, Del opened it. The message was formal, almost comically so. "Greetings, Human Representative Martinez. My designation is CXIX, Chief Xenobiologist of the Galactic Ecological Preservation Bureau. We have observed your planet's ecosystems and are intrigued by your species' apparent comfort in coexisting with apex predators. Our preliminary classification of your world suggests it may be a Class X hazard sphere. We request further information." Del reread the email 3 times, then Googled Class X hazard sphere. Unsurprisingly, the search yielded nothing but ads for sci-fi novels. After some internal debate, he typed back, "Hi, C6Ix, or whatever your real name is. You've got the wrong guy. I'm just a wildlife filmmaker. If you want to know about apex predators, I can send you some YouTube links, or you can check out my show, Del's Danger Diaries. Let me know if you're interested. Cheers, Del." He hit send and went back to editing footage of a jaguar chasing a capybara. The email would have been forgotten if CXIX hadn't responded within minutes. "We are not mistaken. Your species demonstrates unique behavioral patterns, proximity to danger, deliberate documentation of lethal species, and peculiar nomenclature, such as referring to a serpentine apex predator as a danger noodle. Please elaborate." Del choked on his coffee. He wasn't sure which was more unsettling, that an alien species had been observing Earth, or that they somehow knew about memes. Deciding he might as well lean into the absurdity, Del attached a video clip of himself standing 5 feet from an anaconda, narrating in his signature style, "Here we see the mighty danger noodle in its natural habitat, a swampy hellscape where it reigns supreme. Observe its absolute chonkitude as it slithers toward the cameraman. Oh wait, that's me. Better back up." The email exchange escalated from there. CXIX had an endless supply of questions, ranging from technical, "What evolutionary advantage is provided by your species' reckless proximity to predators?" to existential, "Is this behavior a form of ritual sacrifice, or do you merely lack survival instincts?" Del's replies were equally unfiltered. "Reckless? Nah. It's called curiosity. Humans are basically cats, except we have opposable thumbs and a Netflix subscription." Before long, CXIX proposed a live visit, and Del, fueled by equal parts curiosity and caffeine, agreed. The alien arrived 2 weeks later, materializing in his backyard with an audible pop. It resembled a sentient jellyfish, floating in a shimmering containment orb and blinking with what Del assumed were eyes. Its voice was a mixture of mechanical tones and high-pitched squeals, translated via a sleek device it wore like a brooch. "Greetings, Ambassador Martinez," it said, sounding vaguely like a GPS system with an attitude. "Call me Del," he replied, trying not to laugh. "You must be CXIX. Correct. I am here to observe your danger noodle and assess its predatory efficiency." "Great. Let's start with the swamp." He grabbed his gear, and within hours they were ankle-deep in muck. Miguel, Del's local guide, met them with a knowing smirk. "Another tourist?" Miguel asked, eyeing CXIX's glowing orb. "Something like that," Del muttered. "Ready to meet an anaconda?" The answer apparently was no. The moment the massive snake slithered into view, CXIX emitted a sound that could only be described as a galactic scream. It wobbled in its orb, its translucent tendrils flailing like overcooked spaghetti. "Why does it approach us?" Six Eyes demanded. "Relax," Del said, grinning. "It's just curious." The anaconda, in classic danger noodle fashion, coiled itself around a tree and began inching closer. Six Eyes' orb emitted frantic pulses of light, which only seemed to interest the snake more. "Your calm demeanor is illogical," Six Eyes shrieked. "This entity is clearly designed for consumption." "Yeah," Del admitted, snapping photos. "But it's also kind of cute, right?" The snake lunged, just a feint, but enough to make Six Eyes recoil so violently that it tipped its orb over into the swamp. Del and Miguel had to fish the alien out, laughing the entire time. By the end of the encounter, Six Eyes' orb was covered in mud, and its dignity was in shambles. "This planet," it declared, still dripping, "is an ecological nightmare." "Welcome to Earth," Del said, handing it a towel. "You ain't seen nothing yet." By the time they returned to Del's cabin, Six Eyes had composed itself enough to offer a formal statement. "Humanity's reckless coexistence with lethal predators is unprecedented. We require further documentation." Del grinned. "You're in luck, buddy. I've got plenty more danger noodles to show you." Six Eyes' enthusiasm, or something resembling it, seemed to return once it was safely back in Del's cabin. The alien's orb hovered a foot off the ground, its tendrils pulsating faintly. Del watched as it blinked in what he assumed was its version of Morse code, beeping and booping at an invisible audience through its communication device. "They're going to think you're lying," Del said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "I mean, an anaconda's not even in the top 10 scariest things we've got. Wait until I show you a cassowary." Six Eyes turned, or perhaps rotated, toward him. Its voice module chirped. "A cassowary? Explain." Del chuckled, pulling up a photo of the dinosaur-like bird on his laptop. "This bad boy right here looks like an ostrich's angry cousin. It can run 30 miles per hour, jump 5 feet in the air, and its claws can disembowel you with a single kick. We call it a murder chicken." Six Eyes emitted a series of distressed chimes. "Why does your species persist in sharing habitats with entities capable of disemboweling you?" "Because they're neat," Del said, shrugging. "Besides, they're not that bad unless you annoy them." "Define annoy," Six Eyes demanded. "Well, getting too close, making sudden movements, invading their territory. Basically, being human." The alien let out what could only be described as a weary sigh, the sound distorted by its translator. "Your species exhibits reckless abandon in the presence of danger. This behavior contradicts all logical survival instincts." "Yeah," Del said, sipping his coffee, "we're a special kind of stupid." Miguel, who had been eavesdropping while cleaning his boots, chimed in. "It's not stupidity, it's stubbornness. Humans don't like being told what we can't do. You tell us not to touch something dangerous, and we'll touch it just to prove we can." Six Eyes seemed to contemplate this, its orb emitting a faint hum. "Your species possesses an evolutionary anomaly. What you describe as curiosity and defiance would on most planets result in extinction. Well, lucky for us, we're built different," Del said with a grin. "Now, what's next on your alien bucket list?" Six Eyes hovered closer, its orb vibrating with what Del assumed was excitement. "I propose an observational expedition to another predator habitat. I have already selected a candidate." "Let me guess," Del said, pulling up his browser. "Great white shark, Komodo dragon, hippo." Six Eyes hesitated before replying. "The entity known as Ursus arctos horribilis." Del whistled. "The grizzly bear, huh? You're diving right into the deep end." "All right, I know a place." 2 days later, the trio found themselves deep in the wilderness of Alaska, trudging through thick underbrush. Six Eyes had insisted on carrying a recording device, which it clumsily strapped to its orb, giving the impression of a floating security camera. Miguel was less amused, muttering under his breath as he swatted away mosquitoes the size of golf balls. "Grizzlies, huh?" Miguel said, side-eyeing Del. You're really trying to make your alien buddy regret this trip. Hey, it was X's idea, Del said. I just facilitate the chaos. The sound of a rushing river grew louder as they approached a clearing. Del motioned for everyone to stop and whispered, "All right, keep your voices down. The bears come here to fish. For salmon, we'll hang back and observe." X's orb began to vibrate erratically. "Your hanging back is insufficient. The apex predator will detect us and engage in predatory behavior." "Relax," Del whispered. "Bears are more scared of us than we are of them." As if on cue, a massive grizzly lumbered into view, its fur glistening in the sunlight. It strolled to the riverbank, oblivious to the small group watching from a distance. Del adjusted his camera, whispering excitedly, "Look at that beauty." "Absolute unit," X's translator buzzed. "This entity appears designed for physical domination. Its musculature and claws suggest an overwhelming advantage in combat." "Yeah, it's a tank," Del said, "but it's also kinda goofy. Watch." The bear plunged its head into the river, emerging with a thrashing salmon in its jaws. It tossed the fish into the air like a carnival act before swallowing it whole. X's emitted a curious beep. "This behavior is inefficient. It wastes energy on theatrics." "It's called style," Del said. "Humans do it too. Ever see someone flip a pancake?" The bear suddenly paused, its ears perking up. Del froze. Miguel muttered, Del, I think it heard us." Before anyone could react, the bear turned, its dark eyes locking onto the group. Del could almost hear Numa's internal processor melting down as the alien emitted a shrill alarm. "It is approaching us! This is unacceptable!" "Calm down," Del whispered. "If we stay still, it'll lose interest." Miguel grabbed his arm. "Yeah, or it'll get really interested." The bear took a slow, deliberate step forward, sniffing the air. Nikes, in full panic mode, began to emit a series of flashing lights, which only seemed to agitate the bear further. Del sighed. "All right. Plan B. Time to go." "Plan B?" Nikes asked, its orb wobbling erratically. "Run!" Del shouted, already bolting toward the tree line. The bear let out a low growl and gave chase. Miguel cursed under his breath as he sprinted, while Nikes bobbed awkwardly behind them, its translator yelling, "This is highly inefficient. Why are we not employing deterrent strategies?" "Because we're busy, not dying," Del shot back. The chase ended abruptly when the bear lost interest and wandered back toward the river, leaving the trio gasping for breath in the underbrush. Del collapsed onto the ground, laughing hysterically. "See? What did I tell you? Humans are survivors." Nye hovered silently for a moment before replying, "Your species is unfit for interstellar travel. The galactic community will require millennia to understand your persistence." "Welcome to Earth," Del said, grinning. "It's a wild ride." After the bear incident, X's insisted on a cooling-off period before attempting another field expedition. This gave Del and Miguel a much-needed break from playing tour guides to a hyper-curious alien jellyfish with an apparent death wish. For a few days, they stayed close to Del's cabin, which was becoming increasingly cluttered with X's alien equipment, most of it labeled with incomprehensible symbols that looked like a cross between hieroglyphs and modern art. X's spent the downtime reviewing its field recordings, occasionally blurting out phrases like statistically improbable or unacceptable levels of predation. Del found it all amusing, though Miguel was starting to lose patience. "Are we getting hazard pay for this?" Miguel muttered, one morning sipping his coffee, "because I'm pretty sure being chased by a bear wasn't in the job description." "Technically, there's no job description," Del replied, flipping through a field guide on Australian wildlife. "This is pure volunteer work." Miguel groaned. "You better have something safer lined up next." "Safer?" Del grinned, sliding the book across the table. "How do you feel about saltwater crocodiles?" Miguel's face dropped. "Del, no." Nikes, who had been silent for the past hour, suddenly perked up. Its orb glowed faintly as it asked, "Explain the characteristics of this saltwater crocodile." Dell turned to the alien, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Oh, they're the apex of apex predators. Over 20 feet long, bite force of 3,700 pounds per square inch, and they've been around since the time of the dinosaurs. They're basically living tanks." CXIX emitted a rapid series of beeps, which Dell now recognized as its version of nervous laughter. "And you propose to interact with this entity directly?" "Well, not directly," Dell said, smirking. "We'll observe from a safe distance, probably." 2 flights and a bumpy boat ride later, the trio found themselves in the heart of Australia's Northern Territory, surrounded by mangroves, mosquitoes, and humidity that felt like breathing through a wet sock. Their guide for the day was a wiry local named Trevor, who greeted them with an enthusiasm that Miguel immediately mistrusted. "You're gonna love it, mate," Trevor said, slapping Dell on the back. "Got some real big crocs in this area, proper monsters." CXIX's orb floated unsteadily over the uneven terrain, its translator chirping, "This habitat is categorically inhospitable. How does your species endure such conditions?" "Lots of sunscreen," Dell quipped, applying another layer to his already shiny face, "and a healthy disregard for personal safety." Trevor led them to a rickety observation platform overlooking a murky stretch of river. The water was deceptively calm, its surface broken only by the occasional ripple. Dell set up his camera, while Six-Week scanned the area with its alien devices. The orb now equipped with a telescoping appendage that looked like a high-tech selfie stick. Miguel, leaning on the railing, muttered, "This feels like a bad idea." Dell grinned. "Relax. Crocs are ambush predators. As long as we don't." The water exploded as a massive crocodile surged upward, jaws snapping at a bird that had wandered too close. Dell and Miguel jumped back, while Six let out a sound that was equal parts siren and squeal. "Correction," Dell said, breathless. "Crocs are dramatic ambush predators." Six-Knight's orb jittered violently. "This entity's predatory efficiency exceeds even Ursus Arctos Horribilis. Its stealth capabilities are unparalleled." "Yeah, they're sneaky," Dell said, adjusting his camera. "But that's what makes them so fascinating. They've been perfecting this routine for millions of years." Trevor, unfazed by the sudden display of raw predatory power, pointed to another ripple in the water. "There's a bigger one down that way. We call him Bruce. Been around for decades. Absolute legend." Six-Knight's orb tilted toward Trevor. "Your species assigns individual identifiers to apex predators?" "Of course," Trevor said, grinning. "Makes it more personal." Six-Knights emitted a confused hum. "Personalizing entities designed for predation is illogical." "Welcome to humanity," Miguel muttered. As the day progressed, they spotted several more crocodiles, each one more impressive than the last. Six-Knights recorded everything, its orb now emitting a constant hum of data collection. Dell was in his element, narrating each encounter with the enthusiasm of a nature documentary host. Miguel, however, remained on edge. It wasn't until late afternoon that things took a turn. While Trevor was recounting a story about a crocodile flipping a boat, Dell noticed Six-Knight's orb hovering precariously close to the water's edge. "Hey, Six-Eyes," Dell called. "Maybe don't dangle yourself over the crocodile buffet." But before the alien could respond, the water erupted again. A massive crocodile, easily 18 feet long, lunged toward Six-Knight's orb, jaws snapping shut inches away. The orb shot upward with a panicked squeal, nearly colliding with the observation platform. "Bruce!" Trevor shouted, laughing. "You cheeky!" "A bugger!" Six-Knights, now hovering at least 10 feet above everyone's heads, emitted a series of frantic beeps. "This planet is beyond hazardous. No other sentient species would willingly inhabit such an environment." Dell couldn't stop laughing. even as Miguel dragged him back from the edge of the platform. "Come on, C6X," he said, wiping tears from his eyes. "You gotta admit it's kind of amazing." "Amazing," C6X repeated, its voice tinged with disbelief. "This environment defies all rational parameters for sentient habitation. Your species is—" It paused, as if searching for the right word. "Insane." "Yeah, probably," Del said with a grin. "But you're still here, aren't you?" C6X didn't respond, its orb humming quietly as it processed the day's events. Del took that as a victory. Trevor, ever the optimist, clapped his hands together. "Right then, who's ready for a night tour?" The sun was setting over the mangroves, painting the sky in fiery streaks of orange and purple. The oppressive heat of the day gave way to a humid, sticky warmth that clung to everything. Del leaned against the observation platform's railing, staring at the darkening waters. Somewhere out there, Bruce and his scaly brethren were settling in for the night, or perhaps gearing up for another round of terrorizing anything foolish enough to get close. 6X hovered silently nearby, its orb dimmer than usual, clearly deep in thought. Miguel sat a few feet away, trying to ward off mosquitoes with a piece of burning eucalyptus bark that Trevor had insisted was an old bush trick. It wasn't working. "You're telling me," Miguel said, slapping his arm for the 10th time, "that this is the perfect time for a night tour?" "Absolutely, mate," Trevor replied cheerfully. He was rummaging through a duffel bag, pulling out flashlights, a thermos, and what looked suspiciously like a flare gun. "The crocs are more active at night. You'll get a real show." Del grinned. "See, Miguel, real show." "Real dumb," Miguel muttered, but he stood up anyway. 6X's translator buzzed. "Your species displays a curious tendency to escalate risky behavior as conditions deteriorate." "Explain." Del smirked. "Oh, that's simple. The less we can see, the braver we think we are." C6X emitted a sound that could only be described as a defeated groan. By the time the group set out, the mangroves were cloaked in darkness. The only illumination came from their flashlights, the weak beams cutting through the thick, misty air. The swamp was alive with sounds. The croaks of frogs, the hum of insects, the occasional splash of something unseen slipping into the water. Trevor led the way, his confidence unwavering, while Miguel followed close behind, muttering prayers in Spanish. Del stayed at the rear, his camera rolling. 6X hovered next to him, its orb glowing faintly like a misplaced firefly. The alien had been uncharacteristically quiet since the crocodile incident earlier in the day. Del couldn't help but wonder if they'd finally pushed it too far. "You okay back there, 6X?" he asked, keeping his voice low. The orb tilted toward him. "Your world is a paradox. Its danger should deter all sentient life, yet your species thrives here." Del shrugged. "We're stubborn and adaptable. Nature throws something at us, and we figure out how to deal with it." "Reckless adaptation," 6X replied. "Yet effective, intriguing." Trevor suddenly halted, raising a hand to signal silence. The group froze. In the beam of his flashlight, a pair of glowing eyes gleamed just above the surface of the water. Trevor grinned. "That's a big one," he whispered. "Might be Bruce again. Let's see if we can get a closer look." Miguel groaned. "This is how horror movies start." Trevor ignored him, stepping closer to the water's edge. Del followed, adjusting his camera. The eyes vanished for a moment, then reappeared a few feet closer. Trevor whistled softly. "He's a curious one tonight." The water rippled, and Del's heart raced as he realized just how massive the creature was. Bruce, or whatever crocodile. This could have easily swallowed a grown man whole. Trevor's flashlight beam danced across the water, revealing the ridge of the croc's back and its enormous tail slicing through the surface. "All right," Trevor whispered. "He's coming up for a look." The croc surged forward, its powerful body sending a wave crashing onto the bank. Trevor stumbled back, laughing. Miguel yelped and scrambled behind Del, who instinctively held his ground, camera trained on the U action. But CXIX's reaction was the most dramatic. Its orb shot straight up into the air, flashing erratically and emitting a high-pitched alarm. Predatory engagement imminent. Retreat recommended. The commotion startled the croc, which thrashed in the shallows before disappearing back into the murky depths. Trevor shook his head, chuckling. "Spooked him, you lot. Poor Bruce just wanted to say hello." "Yeah, sure," Miguel said still, clutching Del's shoulder. "Let's call it that." Six Wikes slowly descended, its lights dimming. Your species' inability to maintain composure in the face of apex predators is both baffling and remarkable. "It's called adrenaline," Del said, grinning. "Gets the blood pumping." The alien hummed thoughtfully, its orb flickering. "Adrenaline, a chemical response to imminent danger. Perhaps this explains your persistence." As they turned to head back to the platform, Trevor paused, frowning. "Wait a second. What now?" Miguel asked, clearly done with the whole experience. Trevor pointed to the water. "That ripple, it's too big to be a croc." Del frowned, adjusting his flashlight. Sure enough, a massive disturbance was spreading across the surface, accompanied by a low, guttural rumble. Something enormous was moving beneath the water. Trevor's grin faltered. "That's not Bruce." The rumble grew louder, and suddenly a massive shape erupted from the water. It wasn't a crocodile, it was something else entirely, a prehistoric-looking beast with armored plates and jagged fins, its gaping maw lined with rows of jagged teeth. It let out a bone-chilling roar, spraying the group with swamp water. "What the hell is that?" Miguel shouted, scrambling backward. "A megalania," Trevor whispered, his voice tinged with awe. "Thought they were extinct." Del's jaw dropped. "You mean a giant monitor lizard?" Trevor nodded. "Biggest predator Australia ever had, and it's back." 6IX was frozen, its orb vibrating so violently it looked like it might explode. This entity defies classification. Impossible, improbable, dangerous. The megalania lunged, its massive claws gouging into the muddy bank as it hauled itself toward the group. Del grabbed CXIX's orb and shouted, "Run!" They bolted, the ground shaking as the creature gave chase. Del's camera bounced wildly in his hands as he sprinted, adrenaline surging through his veins. Miguel was screaming in Spanish. Trevor was shouting something about flare guns, and CXIX's translator was spewing a chaotic mix of warnings and incomprehensible alien noises. Del glanced back just in time to see the megalania swipe at CXIX's orb with its claws missing by inches. The alien emitted a shrill beep and shot upward, disappearing into the canopy. "Great!" Del shouted. "Abandon us, why don't you?" Trevor skidded to a stop, whipped out the flare gun and fired it, directly at the creature's face. The flare exploded in a blinding burst of light, startling the beast long enough for the group to scramble up a steep embankment. They didn't stop running until they reached the safety of the observation platform. Panting and drenched, they collapsed onto the wooden planks. 6IX eventually reappeared, its orb flickering faintly as it hovered down to their level. "Your planet," it said, its voice trembling, "is the epitome of chaos." Del laughed, wiping mud from his face. "Yeah, but you can't say it's boring." 6IX emitted a long, static-filled sigh. "The Galactic Ecological Preservation Bureau must reassess its classification of this world. Humanity's continued. Survival here is an anomaly. Or maybe," Del said, grinning, "we're just that good." The alien didn't reply, its orb humming softly as it recorded the aftermath of their latest encounter. Del leaned back, staring at the star-filled sky. This wasn't how he'd imagined humanity's introduction to the galaxy, but he couldn't help feeling proud. Earth was terrifying, unpredictable, and utterly insane, but it was home.